So today we're going to talk about something that seems a little bit backwards when it comes to language learning, but the issue is there's so much advice out there. There's so many people telling you to do this and that we need to cut it down so that we can actually really focus in on the things that are really going to make a difference. And like I said, today's advice might sound a little bit different than other stuff you've heard in the past, but just stick with me because if you get to the end, you're going to see that it really might be the thing that pushes you forward, finally. So we'll get right into it. So today we're going to talk about the toothpaste paradox, okay? So the toothpaste paradox is why skipping the basics is the fastest path to fluency if your goal is finally making progress in the language, okay? So here's the well-rounded trap, just to start us off. Everyone starts the boring way, and that's kind of why they stall. So basically, they go through the colors, the weather, the days of the week. Every app, every class basically opens here, okay? I mean, think about when you go through a textbook and you're kind of like learning what is purple, what is green, right? These colors on the screen, what is yellow? You learn all of these things, but that isn't necessarily the way that we actually speak a language. We don't necessarily speak in terms of categories. We speak in terms of frequency. And you've probably heard me say this before, but you're going to see it in this video kind of laid out probably in a way we haven't spoken about in the past. So every app, every class opens here, okay? And here's the promise. Build a broad foundation first, and then you can build upon that foundation, okay? But you end up perfectly mediocre at basically everything. And that's when a lot of the anxiety for actually speaking begins to happen. It becomes very hard to open your mouth and speak with new speakers because you realize that no matter what category you discuss, you don't feel very confident. And that's really where things slip, okay? So a broad foundation feels safe, but it's actually the slowest road there is. And I just want to let you know right now that if you look down in the description, I've actually made a free AI tool for you to put in your own method and what you're doing, and it will calculate whether or not it's actually going to get you to your goals in a reasonable amount of time. Totally free in the description and in the pinned comment as well. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Completely flip what you've been doing. Don't go wide. Don't no longer learn about all the cars, like all the vehicles, how, plane, bus, ship, all that stuff. You don't need to learn that. I want you to go absurdly narrow, okay? Pick one specific, weird, ideally, obsession, something that you really love. And this could be anything. It could be philosophy. It could be watches. It could be video game lore. It really doesn't matter. I want you to go specific into the thing that you like, regardless of whether or not you're speaking your second language, third language, or even first language. It doesn't matter. The thing that you personally care about will take you forward at a faster rate than things you don't. And I'm guessing that you probably have a bigger interest in one category of things than another category, okay? If you're just like any other regular human being. So anyway, master that micro domain and ignore the rest. Get really good at that one thing in your target language and then forget the rest of it. And we call this microfluency, being super, super good at this one micro area. This is what's important. So become an absolute genius in one tiny corner before you're competent anywhere. Okay, so basically what you want to do is get really good at this small area and then you can move it elsewhere. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So here's the Trojan horse, okay? One topic forces constant grammar reuse. So if you're constantly talking about, let's say, okay, let's go back to watches, okay? You might be always talking about winding or about ticking or about the face of a watch or the dial of a watch, the bezel of a watch, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to get better at understanding these nouns, these adjectives, these verbs. And of course, all of the high frequency things that would be in any other part of the language. So, in English, we might be using the words the or and, et cetera, et cetera. All those high frequency things are going to appear no matter what niche or what corner of the language you're looking at. So you're going to learn the stuff that will transfer over easily, but you get to learn it in a familiar context, in a familiar environment. And that's kind of why it pays off really, really well. So you're not memorizing rules here. You're wearing grooves. You're getting more and more familiar with the terrain. And the niche is just the delivery vehicle for the whole engine, which is what I was mentioning to you before about the idea that you're going to get all this high frequency words, or you're going to get all this stuff that you want to get in other areas. You're going to get that in any area that you study. So if you care about cameras or nature or whatever it is, learning about those things, you will pick up the high frequency stuff and it will be more easily transferable to other categories afterwards, okay? So hijack your flashcards. If you're someone who uses flashcards, you might not be, but if you are, this is for you. And it doesn't matter if you use Anki or if you use paper flashcards or Memrise or some other system. It doesn't matter. It's all the same, okay? Stop using sterile, generic example sentences, okay? So what I want you to do going forward is tie every single new word to your obsession, okay? So if you learn banana, what you might say, right? If you come across the word banana because you're learning about, I don't know, let's say cooking, you might be able to take any other word you learn and somehow tie the word banana to some other niche. So is that you might say something, oh, this thing is, for example, yellow, like a banana. So you might be learning about some other niche and you learn cooking initially, you're able to tie it back to your obsession, okay? So next is I needed the word for spring. Okay, not a season, not a metal, not a metal spring, but the card I made was mechanical watches use springs to save energy. Okay, so hopefully you see exactly what I'm saying. I needed the word for spring, not a season, not a metal spring. The card I made was mechanical watches use springs to save energy. And now look, you could even make a card. Let's say you're learning about the seasons later on, and let's say it is about the season. Okay, let's say you are learning about this thing and you already learned about watches for whatever reason you like watches. Okay, you might say, hey, just like the thing that powers a watch or it has a battery reserve in the watch, I think that's the way it works, right? The season shares the same name. And then, then you can remember the word for spring if you were learning English, for example. But you're tying it back to the obsession, which initially was the watches, okay? So now it sticks because it's mine. So because I tied the language to my obsession, and now as I branch out, I'm tying the language back into things that I'm already very familiar with because I tackled this whole idea of microfluency, now I can learn the language a lot more efficiently and really at just an accelerated rate. So the immersion exploit. Let's talk about how we tie immersion to this, okay? So talking about a couple of my students here, we have Aria. Aria, if you're watching this, love you. Okay, Aria learned spatial phrases from a niche game, okay? She learned things like down 4 blocks or under the bench, and this was effortless. Do you know why? It's because she was playing this Japanese game called Little Kitty, Big City. I've never played it before, but I've seen it on YouTube. And so she's learning things like down. She's learning things like under. She's learning the bench. And okay, that was a terrible arrow. But you get my point. The idea here is under, that's going to be a really, really common word. Or down or 4 or even blocks. Blocks might not be as common. But I'm just realizing I'm not even sharing my screen here. Now you can see here. Basically, what you can see here is Aria, my student, learned from this game things like down 4 blocks, under the bench. So it should be very, very clear that these super high frequency words like under or down are going to show up. It's also going to show up in cooking or in watchmaking or whatever. So hopefully this makes sense. And it's going to be a lot more easy. In fact, it's going to be near effortless if you're already consuming things that you really, really care about. So Lada, another one of my students, again, love you, okay, watched a long Korean game stream and she was really into this game. She was into the streamer. So she already knew the lore of this game. So the language clicked. She had this past understanding, right? Past understanding of the way the game worked because she already liked the game. And so when she watched it now in Korean, and she's actually a native German speaker watching it now in Korean, it was making sense because it was attaching itself to things that are already in the purview of her obsession, right? The stuff that she really cared about, which was this video game. So prior obsession makes hard input comprehensible. We're taking it from right here, again, pretty terrible arrow, and bringing it right here. We're now making it comprehensible. And if you know anything about, the way at least I decided to learn languages at Fluency Formula, CI, comprehensible input is the most important thing. Well, for the most part. And so we're taking hard input and making it comprehensible. Just because why? Well, we're doing it in a niche. We're picking our niche for stuff we care about, and we're exploiting that in our immersion. So when you already know the world, the foreign words have somewhere to land. So again, one thing that can make just content way more comprehensible in general is that you have some sort of background. And if you have an obsession, then you know a lot about it. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is it's up to you to choose. You can choose whatever it is. And then I want you to find content that specifically speaks to that niche, specifically speaks to that obsession. And you can acquire not only the high frequency words of that language, but you can also acquire all the words of something that you already know you like to talk about. And so now when you want to feel confident having, a language with a native speaker of that language, you have somewhere to go and you have somewhere where you feel familiar. And if you can find different inroads back to that topic, then you're going to be really, really good. In fact, this is something that a lot of language learners and polyglots are accused of, basically saying that they're only good at self-introductions or talking about language learning. And maybe that's true. If you watch one of your favorite polyglots and you see them doing an interview and they're talking about the same thing every time, well, yeah, I mean, that's not even necessarily a bad thing. Even though they get accused of doing that by all these different channels or whatever, that's not a bad thing. They're still speaking the language at a high level. Maybe it's in the realm of this microfluency that we're discussing. But again, that's what probably catapulted them to a level where they can speak with some authority on language learning in general. So I want you to take that away. Okay, so embrace the imbalance. Here's a personal story of mine that honestly is kind of funny. So I could debate capitalism with my Mandarin tutors. I talk about this in my kind of more popular video on my channel that's now at about 1 million views. You can just take a look at it on my channel if you're interested. But I was literally having debates about capitalism and these different things, right? I was able to talk about those things because that's what I was interested in at the time. But I could not say toothpaste or pour water, like, taking a cup of water and pouring water into another cup. I literally did not know the verb for pour and I didn't know the words for toothpaste. Now, if you were to go in some like typical textbook or whatever, you would notice that these words are probably going to show up very early, right? So like, especially like something like toothpaste. When you go into the page on, in the textbook that shows the bathroom, you're clearly going to see, okay, we have a toothpaste, we have a toothbrush, we have a whatever, a shower, a toilet, whatever we might have. Well, I didn't go through that method. And so I didn't know things like toothpaste. And frankly, things like pour water or toothpaste or whatever it might be just weren't especially interesting to me. They were kind of mundane. But things like this, when I was debating philosophy and politics, that was interesting to me. And so, yeah, this was a huge imbalance. It was a huge imbalance. People would say, how do you know this stuff? How do you know this stuff right here? But I have no idea about this stuff right here. Okay. Well, again, that was completely fine. It doesn't matter. The language learning is yours. So someone might say, oh, you're at a higher level or lower level because you don't know these words. But the fact that you know this word, or you know how to even debate, even do this thing, right? Debate about that speaks for itself. And if you enjoy it, that's what's important, okay? So most learners panic at the gaps and retreat to basics. Now, I am someone who's done that myself, right? Where I'm kind of like, you question your own level because you're like, okay, wow, I don't even know the word for sand. And yet I can describe maybe, I can describe the way water works, like hydrodynamics or something, who knows, right? I'm just making stuff up on the fly here. But the point is that there is this imbalance and you need to embrace it. The language is only as important as you enjoy it, really, right? So if you don't enjoy talking about something, don't worry about it. It'll get there eventually if you care to, okay? So sounding like a genius about one thing beats sounding average about everything. Now, you may or may not agree with me on this, but my personal view is that if you can go into a conversation and feel really, really good and build that confidence, it's going to transition over to, other places where then, even if you're experimenting and you need to find new words down the line, you still have the confidence of knowing that if you can find some inroads into this place that you already like talking about because it's your niche or your obsession or whatever, if you can find some way back, then you're going to feel confident again. And the fact that you have that confidence and those inroads to confidence are going to then help you branch out into other areas later on and enjoy the language just more on the whole. And that's really what this is about. I mean, if you quit too early, then you're not going to get to where you want to go. You need to find a way to stay in the game. And that's what this presentation, honestly, is really about. Okay? So the self-intro weapon, another piece that I want to offer you here today, is this is something that I talked about earlier with a lot of these polyglots that, they introduce themselves and their history and why they started learning and all this stuff super, super well. They do that super well. This is actually a really powerful tool. So what I want from you is I want you to write one complex rehearsed script about yourself. Okay, you can use AI to do this or whatever you use. The point is you're going to use this all the time. And this can be kind of like this little micro niche that you're really good at, talking about yourself and maybe language learning or whatever. Okay. Talk about why you're learning, exactly how you study. The reason why you want to talk about these things is because these are obvious questions that you're going to be asked. When people meet you for the first time, if you start speaking at even at half decent level, right? Tons of mistakes, no problem, but they understand what you're saying. People are going to say, hey, how long have you been studying? What did you do to study? People will be interested in this, right? People will be interested. So I want to make that point. Okay. Then run it past a rotation of italki tutors. It can either be italki or honestly, you can go on Omegle. You can go on Ome TV or whatever, right? These polyglots that surprise people. I actually have some of these videos coming out soon, surprising people online with their language abilities. Do it there and just practice that. It's completely free. So there's really no harm. And then same script, fresh ears, endless reps. You're going to get really good at this because this self-intro becomes one of your microfluency areas. And it's a really good place to be because people are always going to ask you this question. Okay, when you first meet someone, who are you? What's your background? Why did you start learning a language? How did you learn a language? All these sorts of things. So if you take this and really turn it into this thing that you practice, you're going to get better at the language, I promise. Okay? So when does this pay off? You're doing all of this. When does this pay off? Well, if you've been watching my channel for a little while, I talk about this. I honestly talk about language learning in a little bit of a militaristic kind of sense. And this doesn't change here, to be honest. So first 200 days, I like to set things in 200 days. I've just seen this amount of time work really well. Can you get results before that? Yes. Have I seen results before that? Yes. But 200 days for me is just a solid number that I really like. Okay. So go all in on one niche, right? That means play the video game that you want in the language that you want. I see a lot of amazing comments below my videos, people asking me, hey, can I play video games to learn a language? Absolutely. And not just play these video games in that language to learn the language, but study the vocabulary, study the grammar, study the things that are popping up in that game so that you can actually mine them for yourself and get super, super good and not just understanding them, but eventually talking about them. Okay. So let the engine build under the surface just by immersing yourself in the niche, in the obsession that you already like. Okay. Then narrow mastery branches outwards, like I mentioned. And then toothpaste and weather show up almost for free. So down the line, once you're talking about and you're debating things like capitalism and you can explain how to wind a watch, even how to make a watch, whatever, down the line, throwing things in your ability, like throwing things in your, let's say your word warehouse where you keep all your vocabulary and whatever, throwing things like toothpaste and weather and pour the water, like I mentioned earlier, show up for free. They're easy to put in because you have so much space to put them. You understand the language, you have a good grapple, a good hand on the language. Oops, skipped a slide there. So go deep first and wide comes for free. Go really, really deep into your niche and then wide later on will come for free. Okay, so if you go wide first, and deep basically just never comes. If you go super wide, it's so easy to quit because your confidence isn't there. You haven't built a really strong foundation of all these really, really basic words. And I say basic, but I really mean high frequency words that appear everywhere. And really the name of the game here is adherence. Can you adhere to a system for the amount of time that it requires? And you probably already know this by now, but there isn't really any finish line. Okay, there isn't really any time where you're like, oh, I'm done. I'm still learning English. I mean, even in this video, I made mistakes, right? So hopefully you understand where I'm going with that, okay? So here's the new rule. Stop trying to be well-rounded on day one. Stop that, okay? Pick the thing you can't shut up about. Whatever it is, it could be a video game, a hobby, it does not matter, okay? Build all your input and reps around that one thing. I would like to aim for 200 days, but that's up to you. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. So being a genius in a corner, not necessarily average everywhere, but be a genius in one corner. That's what I recommend anyway. Okay. So what's your microfluency domain? Think about it and then start this week. Put everything in terms of this microfluency and you're going to get crazy results if you stick to it. Okay. So, skip another slide again. So your obsession isn't a distraction from learning the language. It's the fastest way in. So whatever thing you can pair, and I'm not the first to say this, whatever you can pair with learning a language. So this can be cooking, like I said, it could be anything. I'm not going to keep listing niches. You get the idea, okay? It could even be language learning, by the way, right? If you really like videos or content about learning language and understanding the way it works and different theories about it, then it could be that too, by the way. That's a double whammy for you, okay? So that's the fastest way into the language. That's the fastest way in. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next one. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, don't forget to look at the pinned comment or the description where I've built a GPT just for you to allow you to put your method in and see, are you actually making progress? And when you put it in, it will give you a result really, really quickly, a couple of questions, and then you can get at least a little bit of direction in terms of what you're doing. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and I'll see you in the next one.